just wanted to give a story about myself on the medication called Citalopram or Celexa. I've watched several videos on YouTube already about other people on other antidepressants, and I thought it would be a good idea to give my own experience. So for a quick rundown, I live in the Pacific Northwest in the United States. About 5 years ago, at a work retreat, I had a mental breakdown. I was about 2 hours from home, and I had symptoms like lightheadedness. I felt like I was going to pass out, very fidgety, very nervous. I didn't know what was going on with me. I told my coworkers and let them know, I feel like I'm going to pass out, and they started telling me to just drink a bunch of water and asked if I needed to go to the hospital. And I said, no, I just need to relax and chill out a little bit. But then they started, acting like doctors and telling me what they thought was wrong with me. They thought maybe I was going into diabetic shock or all these things that started making me freak out even more. Needless to say, the drive back home was miserable and terrible, and I went to urgent care after I got back home, and they wouldn't see me. They said my symptoms didn't look like anything that they could help with, so I needed to go to the ER, which scared me even more. So I kept having these layers of terror. So I went to the ER, and they did a bunch of tests on me, an EKG, blood tests, x-rays. I think they did x-rays, just a bunch of tests, and everything came back negative. And the ER physician or doctor told me to go to my primary care physician to be diagnosed with whatever. He wouldn't tell me what was wrong with me. That was very concerning. But because the tests all came back negative, I started coming back down a little bit. Now the problem with going to my doctor is I did not have one at the time, because through most of my life, I never really went to the doctor. But luckily for me, I called up and I was able to get my first doctor within a few days, I think. Those few days were very difficult, very hard. Eventually I went into the doctor, and he gave me these questionnaires to fill out asking me about, stress and anxiety. And I'm like, what is this? And he came back and told me that I had a condition called panic disorder. I've never had that in my whole life. I think at the time, in my mid-30s, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand what was wrong with me, why that happened to me. But he gave me 2 medications. First, he showed me a list of all of the antidepressant medications and all their side effects, and he said, here's the list of medications that might be able to help you. I'm going to let you pick which one you want to pick based on the side effects. And so I took a quick glance at them all, and I went with Citalopram because it had, at least at the time, what appeared to be the least amount of side effects. He also prescribed to me a drug called lorazepam, I think was the name. It's a benzodiazepine. He told me it was very addictive and to only use it when I needed it, when I had really, really stressful occasions. So I said, fine. I think I only had like maybe 10 or 15 pills. So I started taking the citalopram immediately. I think I started on a 10 milligram dose. And he told me that it would take 4 to 6 weeks before I would really feel any effect from it. But at that point, I was so incredibly desperate to just not be an anxious wreck, which I was basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that I was willing to try anything at that point. He also started me in therapy, but that didn't go very well. The therapist I was assigned wasn't very good. So that only lasted 4 or 5 sessions, and I didn't do very well in those. But as far as the following 2 months on this medication, after a few weeks, he bumped me up to 20 milligrams of citalopram. When I was at work and whenever I had really, really bad anxiety where I was kind of doing this, and I'd kind of hunch over and basically be unable to function at work or even at home. He said that's when I should take a lorazepam. I think they're really small, like 0.25 milligram, just tiny little baby pills, but they helped. They worked really fast and got you out of those really, really, really bad moments. I could definitely sense the addictive side to them, so I made sure to only use them when I absolutely needed to. And over the course of the first 4 weeks, I think, of the citalopram, I had a few side effects, especially with digestive stuff. You know, I had diarrhea and abdominal pain. I get really sweaty, especially my palms and my feet. I had a few really bad nightmares. One was so bad that it woke me up in the middle of the night. My heart was just pounding really, really hard. And so I took a lorazepam in the middle of the night, which I'd never had to do before, just to get myself back to sleep. It was, I do remember that first 4 weeks just being an absolute nightmare. From the time I had that mental breakdown at work until I finally got better about 2 months later, it was just, every day was a nightmare. But when you fill out that questionnaire that asks you all those questions, is like 0 to 3, you know, how much does this symptom affect your life? How much does this symptom affect your life? One of them was suicidal ideation. And that was the only question I had a 0 on, because I had no suicidal tendencies at all. That was what was really weird about this. I was terrified of dying, absolutely terrified. And I think that was a big part of my anxiety, is all these physical symptoms I was having, the lightheadedness and the gnawing at my hands like this. I was terrified. Just it's difficult to explain how afraid I was. Every day was living in absolute and utter fear. About 4 weeks later, though, I started to get better. During this 4 weeks, I lost about 15 pounds because I was so nauseous and so nervous I couldn't eat. I was basically down to just drinking an Ensure every day, you know, those little adult beverage, those little adult bottles with the milk powder and sugar and whatever else is in it. That was basically the only thing I could get down because I was so nauseous. So about 4 weeks later, I started to improve a little bit, but I wasn't quite there yet. I stopped taking the lorazepam though, because I didn't have the complete shutdown anxiety attacks or panic attacks that I was having before. And I would say it took me about 2 full months to get to a point where I could function like a normal person again, but it worked. The citalopram worked, and it got me to stop having panic attacks almost entirely. I would have little baby panic attacks here and there that would last maybe 10 to 15 minutes over the course of the next few years. But for the most part, for 4.5 years, I was fantastic. And this is going through the pandemic and the Great Recession and the war in Ukraine. I was able to make it through all that okay. And so at about 4.5 years, which is about, 6 months ago now? No, about 4 months ago now. Me and my doctor decided, hey, let's try to go off your meds. You're doing good. You've lived your life pretty happy for the last 4.5 years. Let's try it. So I did a 6-week tapering off period. So for the first month, I dropped from 20 to 10 milligrams. And then for 2 more weeks, I did half of a 10 milligram pill. I just cut it in half and took half of a pill. And then I was off. And I was fine for 3 months. Perfectly fine. Everything was great. This was during summertime. So, you know, it was nice and sunny outside. I was getting a bunch of housework done that I wanted to get done. And a bunch of chores, a bunch of organization. And then suddenly, in the middle of August, I just collapsed again. Just had it was different this time though. It wasn't a panic attack. It was, well, maybe it was a panic attack, I don't know. But I had an overwhelming sense of dread and loneliness. And I never feel lonely. That was the weird thing about it. I isolation, loneliness, gnawing at me, intrusive thoughts just constantly in my mind. I would wake up in the morning, my hands and feet were sweating, and I was doing kind of a similar kind of hunched over, doing this thing. And so I had completely regressed in the span of 3 months. I don't know why it took 3 months. I know citalopram has a pretty decent half-life, 36 hours, I think, 48 hours. But once it's built up in your system that much, over 4.5 years, I think it took a long time for that to kind of finally flush all out. My doctor told me that when you're on an SSRI for a long time, it can have permanent effects, I guess is what some studies have said, but I don't think that's very true now in my case. So for about 2 weeks I suffered. Well, I wouldn't say 2 weeks, it was actually about 4 weeks I suffered again. There was mornings where I was curled up in a ball on the floor, crying, begging for help, and there was nobody around me to help me because I live alone. I have family and friends, so I confided in them. But it was hard, really hard. So I called my doctor and said, you know, something's wrong with me. I don't understand why I've regressed like this. So he suggested I get back on my meds and try therapy again. I was resistant at first for some reason. I don't know why I was so resistant. I think it was a bit of shame. I felt that I wasn't able to live off of the medication. But my mother told me a very good analogy. She said, do you think diabetics feel shame for being on insulin? Do you think, you know, people with high cholesterol feel shame for being on statins and all these other medications that people take for afflictions that they suffer from? But for some reason, you know, in our culture, there is a sense of shame with mental illness that is unjustified and frankly immoral. And so after a few days of suffering more, I said, you know what, I would rather be on the medication and feel a little bit of shame than feel the way I was feeling. So I got back on again, the same drug, the same citalopram, because it already worked for me. So I thought about trying something else, but I didn't want to go through some experimental phase when I had already had something that worked. So I started again on 10 milligrams. And this time I started therapy again. I tried once more. And this time I got a very good therapist, one who is working with me and helping me. So I'm very, very happy about that. I've only seen her twice so far, but every time I get a schedule, I circle it on my calendar. I'm very happy about getting to go and see her because it really does help a lot. So after about 2 weeks of being on the citalopram 10 milligrams, I went back to my doctor and we discussed, you know, should I stay at 10 and see if that works, or should I go up to 20? I can always go back down to 10 later. So I left that decision up to my doctor because I couldn't make a rational decision there. At the time, I was such an emotional wreck. This time is different than what happened last time. It's a totally different kind of anxiety. I think the medication got me through the COVID isolation without me even knowing it. And once I got off the medication, all that lockdown, all the fear, all the anxiety came rushing back. And now I needed to get back on. So I've been back on for 3 weeks now, 2 weeks at 10 milligrams and 1 week at 20. And I would say yesterday was the first semi-normal day I've had in the last 4 weeks, or about 5 weeks now, because yeah, I was about 2 weeks without doing anything at first. So I've been back on for about 3 weeks. And the medication seems to be working faster this time. I didn't do any benzos this time. I'm just worried about the addictive nature of them, and I was a little afraid of getting hooked on that. Probably wouldn't because I got off last time without a problem, but I just want to be careful. They really feel good, the benzos do, but yeah, I wanted to just be on the citalopram. So that's it, just the one medication. So I just wanted to let everybody know that if you are like me and you had a resurgence like that, there's no shame in getting back on the medication. I feel better, and I'm hoping over the next few weeks to improve even more to where I was before, where I could just function normally. For me, this time, the strangest part was the mornings were really hard. The mornings are really hard. I'm doing this in the morning. It's about 11 a.m. right now, so I'm starting to come out of the morning fog, the morning anxiety, crushing anxiety that I feel in the mornings. This time I lost about 12 pounds in just 3 weeks because of the nausea and stuff. But I think I'm starting to put a little bit of weight back on. But yeah, I should never have gotten off in the first place. But I think it was worth a try. But maybe the timing was bad. I didn't realize how hard the COVID lockdowns and the worry about the war in Ukraine, and here in the States we have a real big issue right now of division in our country. It's really bad right now, and I'm hoping that we can come out of that and just all get along. And now, we got these other the diseases coming out, with the monkeypox, and inflation is really high, and people are really worried. And it was really bad timing for me to get off the medication right now. I should have waited, and next time I will wait until things get better. And if they don't get better, then I will just stay on the medication. I would rather feel functional and normal and happy than be an absolute ball of anxiety and stress. So I would just want to finish off with some side effects. The first time I got on it, the side effects were really bad. Dry mouth is one I had really bad. It didn't make my vision blurry, but it made me really cognizant of my eye floaters, if that makes sense. So I was really focused in on my eye floaters, which I think everybody has those, but for whatever reason, it makes me focus in on those. Sexual side effects were nothing too bad for me. I'd say it just lowers your libido a little bit for at least for me, for a few weeks, and then after that, it didn't really bother me anymore. The digestive side effects are probably the most common, and I guess that's because serotonin is mostly made in your gut. So I had some bad diarrhea. I still have some bad diarrhea, and some stomach pain. And I think that's it really for side effects for me. A lot of my anxiety comes from body stuff. So, if I wake up in the middle of the night, my arm's all numb because I was sleeping on it weird, that would cause anxiety. If I get like a weird muscle pain in my arm after I did a little bit of exercise, that would cause some anxiety. My gut stuff would cause anxiety because I'd worry, is that just a side effect of the drug, or is there something else going on? So, but I'm hopeful that in the coming weeks, I'm only back on 3 weeks, but in the coming weeks, I'll be back to normal fully. And I just want to ask that you guys share your experiences below, or if you have any questions, let me know. I'm on YouTube almost every day, and I like replying to people and seeing what they say. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I might do a follow-up email or a follow-up video in a couple weeks to see if I get better or not. But anyway, have a very blessed time, and if you're on these drugs, please do not feel any shame.